Hello and welcome. I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. Let's first take a look at our top stories. The death toll in Myanmar has now risen to over 2,000, according to the ruling military junta. Rescue efforts are continuing as foreign aid and emergency workforce contributions continue following the devastating 7.7 magnitude earthquake on Friday. Meanwhile, rescue efforts in Thailand are focusing on the site of a collapsed skyscraper with 75 people still missing. A Thai watchdog had flagged the under-construction building before it collapsed, as the golden rescue window is closing after 3 days. US President Donald Trump signals a new tariff plan will apply to everyone as the implementation of multiple tariffs on the 2nd of April draws closer. French far-right leader Marine Le Pen has been barred from public office for 5 years. It comes shortly after she was convicted of embezzlement, ruling her out of the 2027 presidential race, barring appeals. The Kremlin says that Russia is working with the US on a settlement after Trump said he was furious with Vladimir Putin over delays in a ceasefire deal with Ukraine. Trump also threatened sanctions on Russian oil as a result. Iran's supreme leader says the US will face a sharp response if it follows through on Trump's bombing threats over a new nuclear deal. Indirect communications have not yet led to a deal which could limit Iran's nuclear program. Deadly Israeli strikes have continued on Eid, with emergency workers among the bodies recovered. Meanwhile, Israel has issued a counter-proposal to the Egypt peace plan in Gaza, which Hamas has agreed to. In Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu has defied a court freeze by naming the new Shin Bet head. Eli Shavit has been chosen by Netanyahu to replace Ronan Bar, a decision which has led to a court action and discontent among some. We start with some breaking news coming in from the Middle East, and the health ministry in Gaza, which is controlled by Hamas, has reported that the death toll in the Palestinian territory has now risen to 1,001 since Israel resumed its large-scale strikes on March the 18th. The total death count in Gaza since the conflict began on October the 7th, 2023, has risen to 5,357. This includes both civilians and terrorists caught in the ongoing conflict. The recent surge in casualties has sparked widespread international condemnation and calls for an immediate ceasefire. Humanitarian aid to the region remains severely limited due to ongoing blockades. And we have some more information coming in from the updated death toll in Myanmar, which now stands at 2,056. Hopes of finding more survivors are fading as rescue operations slow down. After this, Myanmar has declared a week of national mourning. National flags will fly at half-mast until April the 6th to honour those who lost their lives and to reflect on the widespread damage caused by the earthquake. The hardest-hit city, Mandalay, is seeing rescue efforts wind down as the scale of the devastation does become clearer. Well, we stay with the earthquake that has devastated Myanmar. The 7.7 magnitude quake struck on March the 28th, claiming over 2,000 lives. India acted as the first responder by launching Operation Brahma. India dispatched tons of relief materials, deployed 2 naval ships and set up an army field hospital with 118 medical personnel for immediate humanitarian assistance. The deployment was coordinated with the Ministry of External Affairs and Myanmar authorities. The NDRF team have begun rescue operations at the UHL Tain monastery, where around 170 monks are still stuck. Apart from India, China, Thailand are among the neighbouring countries that have sent relief material and teams, along with aid and personnel from Malaysia, Singapore and Russia. Meanwhile, in Bangkok's Thailand capital, emergency crews have used cranes and sniffer dogs continue to search for around 75 people believed to be buried under the rubble of an under construction skyscraper that collapsed. Bangkok Governor Chadchurt Sinapunt said rescuers are not giving up. Well, the rescue efforts, of course, are still ongoing, but that golden window that we are looking at in any rescue effort is around 3 days. With the earthquake striking on Friday, it means that any search efforts after today will have a concern that the people who were being rescued will no longer be alive. With hundreds missing, 75 also missing in Thailand, the situation does remain dire. The families of those with loved ones who are missing are waiting for that call to hear that their loved ones are alive. The rescue operations, as we just mentioned, from countries across Asia but also elsewhere, continuing with medical supplies in urgent need, also a need for personnel on the ground. But joining us to discuss the latest developments from this tragedy in Myanmar is Myint Kyaw, the former Joint Secretary of the Myanmar Press Council in Thailand. Thank you very much, Myint, for being here today. We've just, of course, heard that the death toll has been updated to over 2,000 with rescue efforts ongoing. Is there much hope left with these rescue efforts, given the time frame in which this earthquake happened nearly 3 days ago, if not more now?
Thank you for having me. Yeah. As far as I heard from the colleagues, friends from the Myanmar, Mandalay, and the other cities, they hundreds of the funerals, and then the cemetery could not handle properly in Mandalay and the Zagai and nearby the cities. So some small city like the Zagai, they around the Mandalay, also the 200 to 500, but nobody know exact numbers in there. The officially today the funders announced over 2,000, but the small cities, some small cities over 200 to 500. Then the cemetery are crowded, and then the people who are still sleeping in the roadside at the night, the Mandalay, the Zagain, and the other city, and then they come up with the shortage of drinking water, food, shelter, electricity, less and less the mobile network coverage, go less and less, because of the backup, the electricity and the system are less and less. And so we still have some contact information, but some we cannot reach to our friends and our colleagues.
Absolutely. The UN has made an appeal for around $8 million worth of aid to support the country, which is still facing, of course, a civil war. How vital is it that these funds, above and beyond what's already been sent from neighbouring countries, is provided to Myanmar to help it get through this truly difficult time?
Yes, the civil war is one of the reasons. In the other area like the Zagai, the west, the Moya, and the second big city in that area, some people want to come to help rescues, but there is the checkpoint, a lot of checkpoint, the Honda sites and the other PDS sites. So that Honda didn't allow to some the political the dividend. So dividends. So that's why the Northern Shan, the local people cannot help each other from the other area. The city in the hit area, the local people only help by each other. The other city, so they the difficulty to have the others area, yeah, that hit area, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We're showing on screen now some of the support that has been coming from India in Operation Brahma. Of course, India, the first nation to send that 15 tons of aid, which has continued in the coming days since the devastating earthquake. How vital is the sort of aid that we're seeing and the efforts from India and other countries who are stepping up to really be there when Myanmar and the people need it the most?
Yeah, and the international rescues and then the foods and water, medical, the assistance are really needed for the different area, not only the Mandalay and Naypyidaw, but also the other small city around that area as well, yeah.
Absolutely. Myint, thank you very much for joining us. An extremely difficult time for those living in Myanmar, living in a humanitarian crisis, made worse, of course, with the ongoing civil war that rages on. But it is not just in Myanmar where places and people have been affected by this devastating earthquake. We also have the situation in Thailand, and 5 Chinese nationals have been arrested in Thailand's Chatuchak district for unlawfully entering the site of a collapsed building and removing critical documents. The incident occurred after a 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck Myanmar on March the 28th, causing the collapse of the 33-storey office building, which was under construction in Bangkok. The suspects were caught taking architectural blueprints and other project materials from the restricted disaster zone. The Thai authorities have filed charges against them for violating an emergency order and are investigating their connection to a Chinese-backed construction firm. The earthquake, which has claimed over 2,000 lives and left 82 people missing and injured several more in Thailand. The building collapsed has raised concerns about the safety of other constructions in the region. Authorities are working to prevent further damage and unauthorised access to disaster sites. My colleague Brian has filed a ground report from the collapsed site. Let's take a look.
Well, NewsX is in Bangkok and we are on a rolling coverage to show everything that is going on in Bangkok. Right now, 5 Chinese officials have been arrested from this very site. Exclusive visuals also you can see that is the very 30-story building that fell prey to the earthquake, and now yes, the authorities are assessing everything they can be done, and now yes, currently 5 Chinese nationals were arrested in this Chatuchak district of Bangkok for unlawfully entering this restricted area that is ahead that we are showing you, and removing important documents from the site of this collapsed building following 2 major earthquakes. And according to the information also that we are receiving, the individuals violated an official directive by attempting to take documents including architectural blueprints and even, very importantly, well, NewsX is in Bangkok and we are doing everything we can in our capacity to show you a rolling coverage of what is going on. 5 Chinese national officials were arrested after the high-level probe was made, and currently, the situation that is on hand is now 5 Chinese nationals were arrested in the Chatuchak district where we are for unlawfully entering this very restricted area, and very importantly, they were removing important documents from the site of this collapsed building following 2 major earthquakes. Now, according to the sources, also individuals violated an official directive by attempting to take documents including architectural blueprints and other related paperwork from the premises. You can see this is the very restricted area, and now 5 Chinese nationals were arrested, and this incident occurred after the 33-story building collapsed that is ahead. And also now reports are indicating that the 5 Chinese nationals have entered the site without proper authorization and were also seen removing documents from the restricted area. These documents were believed to include architectural plans and other building project materials, raising suspicions about their intent. And now a legal office also filed a complaint seeking to hold individuals accountable for violating the emergency order issued by Governor of Bangkok. You can see this is the kiosk that is being, this is a restricted area also, and the building in question was also being constructed as part of a joint venture between Chinese company and a well-known high construction firm. And police had stated that at least one of the arrested individuals also claimed to be a project director associated with the construction company, presenting work permits and documents also linking them to the joint venture. And they have also added that the government, also very importantly, that the government is linking them to the joint venture, and the government were also, the documents were also removed removed for routine insurance purpose, with no indication of attempt to conceal information. These exclusive visuals also of the site that is here, and very importantly, authorities are yet to confirm whether this explanation justifies the breach of entry ban. The Bangkok Metropolitan Administration also emphasized that only those with explicit approval from the Bangkok governor were permitted to access the site, as stated in their posted warnings and legal notices. And now the investigation is also going on, with full work going to assess the full extent of the violation and the significance of the recovery documents. And now the efforts are also being done by the authorities also to help the people who are still stuck under the rubble. Yes, the situation is still very difficult, but yes, the officials are doing everything they can in the capacity to help
Well, thank you to Brian on the scene of that building that has collapsed in Thailand. We are getting some more breaking news, and rescuers searching the rubble of the high-rise building that collapsed as a result of this earthquake have found a 13th body. Officials say of those killed in the horrifying incident, 8 were men and 5 were women. Of course, the situation continues in both Myanmar and Thailand. Sadly, we might see further heightening of these death tolls. The situation, of course, after the first 3 days, rescue efforts get more difficult, and bodies, when they are found, it is unknown whether they will still be alive or not. But as those rescue missions continue, we will, of course, bring you all of the latest from both Myanmar and Thailand. We move on now, and US President Donald Trump has confirmed that his upcoming round of reciprocal tariffs will apply to all nations and not just a select group with the largest trade imbalances. Speaking aboard Air Force One, Trump said the new measures set to be announced on Wednesday, which he calls Liberation Day, will expand beyond earlier plans targeting just 10 to 15 countries. Let's hear to what he said.
Look at trade with Asia, and I wouldn't say anybody is treated as fairly or nicely. And we are going to treat them, going to be much more generous to them in terms of part. I'd be much more generous.
The president has already imposed tariffs on aluminium, steel and automobiles, along with increased duties on Chinese imports. His administration argues that these tariffs protect American industries and serve as leverage for better trade agreements. However, world leaders have been quick to respond. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said Canada will need to dramatically reduce our reliance on the United States. We will need to pivot our trade relationships elsewhere. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz warned that the European Union will respond to the United States custom policy. Meanwhile, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum took a more diplomatic approach, saying we are working with the US government to strengthen the US-Mexico-Canada trade. Critics warn that Trump's aggressive tariff strategy risks escalating trade tensions and harming the global economy. Markets have reacted with concern over the possibility of a prolonged trade war, raising fears of a US recession. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett had previously suggested the focus would be on nations with the worst trade imbalances, though Trump now insists the tariffs will be broader in scope. While details of the new measures remain unclear, Trump has hinted that some tariffs could be adjusted to match foreign duties on US exports. As the world waits for Wednesday's announcement, business and global markets are bracing for the impact of Trump's latest trade move. Well, joining us to discuss these latest developments and the impending trade looming, the trade war that might be looming, is Krasen Stanchev, Professor of Economics at the Sofia University in Bulgaria, of course, joining us from Sofia. Krasen, thank you very much for being here. My first question to you has to look at why Trump is doing this. He says it's going to strengthen American business and the American economy, but experts are saying otherwise. What's in Trump's thinking, do you think, in this process as he sees these tariffs playing out in the markets?
Thanks for having me, and please allow me first to express my condolences to all those who suffered from the events you just commented with your other guests. As to the so-called upgraded initiative of Trump, it's hard to understand what is in the president's brain. But we know from the past, including the first mandate of President Trump, that the initiatives then to impose tariffs on some Chinese and some European products and some Canadian did not work. Actually, the trade globally did not suffer much. For a year, it was a reduction of the global trade by, say, 1.5% of the total volume. What is new now is this whatever cutting everyone with high tariffs, which are really high. They're 5 times above the level of what is typically accepted by the WTO. It violates the agreements within the WTO framework, especially the period of negotiation and that sort of stuff required by those rules. What is important also to realize is that whatever the plan, it won't work because it will hurt first, the American economy. If we take only Canada, Canada imports more from the United States than the countries or businesses from United Kingdom, Germany, France, Japan, and Italy combined. So what would be the difficult task now? You've mentioned those who already promised to respond with a similar measure towards the American businesses. But this is the first reaction. The longer-term response to that, in my point of view, should be further liberalization of the trade agreements from around the world to all the jurisdictions of the world but the United States, which basically will lead to an interest of the American businesses, banks, and entrepreneurs to operate outside the United States. And it will be a very prompt and very immediate effect. Probably in a couple of months, it will be suffered by the consumers in the United States, and this policy will be ended, sooner or later.
Yes, absolutely. Goldman Sachs have risen the odds of a recession to around 35%. For Donald Trump, how damaging could this be to his popularity with midterms coming up, as we know, in the not too distant future? You mentioned the sort of economic vulnerability from these tariffs. How, in further detail, will that directly impact the average American person?
I don't know. I mean, there were studies by the European automotive associations which basically mentioned that roughly 50% of the spare parts used in the top 3 cars, automotive vehicles and lorries in the United States are produced outside the United States, including European Union, including Mexico, including South America, including Canada. Probably they have, something on the stock out there, but sooner or later, these supplies will end, and the replacement by national suppliers will be very difficult because of the costs. Because people of the United States trade with the world because of one very simple reason. The cost of the supplies to the United States industries from abroad is much cheaper than the cost of supplies if they would be produced on the American soil.
Yes, Krasen.
This is probably not true for agriculture, but for everything else as well.
Yes. Sorry to interrupt. I want to look, while we're showing Mark Carney on screen, I want to look at the reactions that we've had from leaders close to America. A very different rhetoric coming from Mark Carney and Claudia Sheinbaum. Well, now we know Trump has used tariffs as a tool, as a leverage previously, but why do you think Carney is hitting back and Sheinbaum is potentially looking at mending relationships and building those bridges when she's going to be hit by the tariffs as well, just as much as Carney is?
Oh, of course, each country, is free to try its own attempt to soften the relationships or to somehow pass by different measures applied by the government of the United States. I don't think it will work for a long period. For the time being, all the efforts to negotiate with President Trump administration on this matter and many other matters, including the war of Russian Federation towards Ukraine, has been failing, and it's very difficult administration even to talk to.
Yes, absolutely. Within the last hour, the UK Prime Minister spokesperson has said that they're expecting these tariffs, despite previous conversations between Starmer and Trump. What will the impact be on the European Union, and how might that strain ties that have already been strained because of Trump's stance on the Russia-Ukraine war?
The European Union already has about 87 free trade agreements from different countries and jurisdictions and unions, custom unions including, from around the world. The only thing, which can be done at the moment is first, as the German Chancellor said, and President von der Leyen said the same, a couple of days earlier, the European Union does not see any possible reaction but raising the tariffs on American imports. But the next step, as I said, should be that the European Union reduces not only the tariffs but the non-tariff barriers to other countries and jurisdictions in order to facilitate supplies and trade with the European Union itself, and second, provide for larger economic opportunities even for businesses and banks, financial markets from America.
Yes, Krasen, to bring an end to this extremely insightful discussion, I want to talk about China. Of course, we know that the US and China are key trading partners, but with these tariffs, do you think there's a gap that China could fill in terms of global trade?
It will be very difficult. I mean, the trade and contractual relations in the economy, any economy, are not similar to a toaster. You cannot, even in a toaster, if you put the electricity on, it takes several minutes, to warm up. And if you switch it off, it takes also, some time, so you have contractual relations of the Chinese suppliers with the global partners. Those contractual relations cannot be skipped immediately. They must be renegotiated. The contract shall be fulfilled. Otherwise, there will be a sanction and so on and so forth. So the economy is not. The economy is based on contracts and inertia of fulfilling contracts.
Yes, Krasen Stanchev, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing us that insight. That is all we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more on the trade war that may be looming and everything else from across the world.